you don't mind.
There we are.
All right. Hello, everybody. And thanks for joining us today on our session on ease of access explained, which is just us diving into the accessibility settings on Windows and Mac OS. And we're going to just kind of take a look at what those accessibility settings have to offer and just kind of go through them a little bit, a couple demonstrations, and just kind of leave it for a couple questions at the end. So I'm James Whitney. I work at the Maryland Assistive Technology Program. I am one of the AT clinicians on staff, and I'm an occupational therapist, and I am one of your presenters today.
Hello, everyone. I'm Stephen Pilato, the Director of the IT Accessibility Policy and Programs here at the Assistive Technology Program.
All right, awesome. And we will be taking you through this today. And just briefly, for anyone who's not aware of our services, we are a free statewide program that helps provide access to assistive technology devices and resources. And we do that in a few different ways. And that's through equipment demonstrations, loaning that equipment out to people for 30-day trials. And we also have a donation-based reuse program that is called the Maryland High Tech AT Reuse Program. So it's a mouthful, but MATR, Matter, is our acronym. And we also have a financial loan arm of what we do that is application based, but we can help get people financial loans for the sole purpose of purchasing assistive technology devices. And we also do trainings, much like today. And Stephen is the director of our IT accessibility initiative, where we do all things accessibility with all digital content, websites, PowerPoints, and so on and so forth, just ensuring that everything is accessible in a digital format for all constituents who are involved. Our website is mdtap.org, mdtap.org. And we are a free resource, and we serve the whole state of Maryland, all ages, all disabilities. And today, I kind of mentioned briefly a second ago, but we will go over accessibility settings on PC, which is called ease of access, and accessibility settings on Mac, which I believe are just called accessibility settings. And we're going to do a couple live demos, and we will also introduce the software that is open source called Morphic, 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 and that is a quick access, downloadable, free, just way to access your accessibility settings, just kind of in a more accessible kind of upfront on your desktop, format. And I'll show you what that looks like. And we'll talk about some other adjacent and other applicable softwares and hardwares that can also help just kind of smooth your overall experience on the computer over. And we'll leave it for questions and discussions at the end, and we will close around 2. So I'll try to wrap up around 1:15, and we'll leave it open for some questions. So let me keep an eye on the time here. All right, so let's kick things off with OS on Windows, ease of access. So first things first, how do you access these settings? So, like what you can do is, just hit your Windows key on your keyboard, or just go down here and just click on the Windows key. It'll bring up your search bar here at the bottom. And Stephen, if you can't see what I'm doing, just let me know. But if you can see it, I'll just keep going.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, cool. Always panic that I didn't hit share full screen. So I could just type ease of access settings right here in the bottom. It'll pop right up. I can click on this. And it'll take me in there. Or I can go to my Windows key, bottom left, and there's a little cog wheel here for your settings. I can click on that, and it will take me usually here. I was already in it earlier. So if I hit that cog wheel for settings, it'll take me to this screen that says Windows settings, and you have a lot of different things you can adjust and kind of go into here. Outside of accessibility. This is kind of your whole system settings here. But over here, the second row down, far right, there, it does read ease of access. If you click on into that, this takes us into our accessibility settings. And let me see. So yeah, So next, I'm just going to kind of talk through kind of what this has to offer. So I will leave that there. So essentially, essentially, this is kind of categorized based on function. And I mean by that is that it's categorized with vision and a visual settings that are adjustable, and then you have hearing, and then down here there is interaction, and that is kind of more physical accessibility settings. So your keyboard settings, mouse settings, and your dictation or speech recognition, and your eye control. For eye gaze bars that can track your pupil and eye movements, and you can use your eyes to actually become the mouse on your computer. And I'll get a little more into that as I get down there. Let's start at the top here. So there is a display is the first setting, and that is how you make things bigger on your computer. So it breaks it down to the first sliding bar here that I'm currently on. I have mine set at a random 137%. But I can make this, if we go all the way to 225% is the max, 100% is your smallest. And this is just for text. So if I go ahead and apply this, hopefully it shows you guys on your screen what I'm looking at. And if Stephen can verify, is this showing up with larger text or is
It
it not?
is.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, essentially that's what this does. I can slide this bar and everything is the same size formatting on my screen except the text. So if I go out into like my Google Slides right here, you can see, for instance, that like my file, edit, view, insert, ribbon up here, this is all just larger text. And even the icons and things as well also have become larger. I would note that a con of this is that because the text and everything gets larger, but the rest of your screen doesn't really adjust, it does kind of make your screen a little more cluttered, if that makes sense. So it does bring everything to a larger point, but now I have a little bit less visual area of like being able to see my actual presentation. So you got to weigh the pros with the cons here, and just kind of see, like what size text do I need, and is it hindering my ability to actually see what I'm working on the computer. But even in my email box here, again, the same thing, my inbox, all this stuff over here is much larger, but my actual area to like read emails is a little bit more hindered. So it's just a pros and cons thing and just kind of figuring out, you know, um, if it's worth it to have it that large or if it's too hindering. And there are other ways to kind of use our accessibility settings with magnifiers and so forth that might be a good middle ground. So what I'm going to do is adjust this back down so that I'm able to see my screen a little bit better. And you do have to hit the apply button. So it won't change anything until I hit apply, and then it'll actually lock in all those settings for you. So then if we keep on kind of going down the line here, I'm still on the first setting, which is our display setting, still here. Next, I can make everything bigger. So not just the text, but everything. So again, it can go from 100%, but at this time, 250% is the max. But your typical settings on a computer will be most likely 150%. So it is the recommended setting. So that's probably what you're locked into unless you've changed it already. So looks like all my icons got squeezed from when I had everything kind of moved earlier. So anyway, so 150% is kind of standard. So like, let's go with the Mac Daddy 250% here. So I know you guys can't see what I see as far as my Zoom kind of just buttons and the grid of attendees and things like that, but that is also now much larger. So everything again, it kind of just gets bigger here. So it almost presents like the text getting bigger, but now my ribbons are bigger at the bottom, my icons are bigger, my Zoom windows are bigger. So now everything is bigger. So again, it might clutter up certain screens and things like that. But overall, it makes things much larger. If you look at my start, menu here now, It was much smaller before. Now it's taking up nearly the entire screen. As before, it was a fraction of the screen it was taking up. So just making things larger. So that is the second way to adjust the size of things. So it changes the size of apps and text on the main display. So I'm going to bring that back down. And that one you don't have to hit apply. It'll just do that one on its own. And you have brightness and things that I can adjust here that you guys probably can't see my screen changing. And there's usually buttons on your on the keyboard that'll also adjust your brightness. So I have F6 and F7 are my screen, like brightness adjustment buttons. So I could just tap those buttons, or you can go in your settings. So that is pretty much what we want to look at on display. I'm not going to get into personalizing windows with animations and things like that. So if we go down the list here, next thing that we can adjust still in our visual settings is the mouse pointer. And that is your old pointer that wiggles around and clicks on things, which is not to be confused with the cursor. The cursor is different. That's when you're typing text. But the mouse pointer, I can adjust the size of my mouse pointer. So there's not much to explain there. I can make it really, really large, hard to miss when it's, as big as it gets. So scale here is from 1 to 15 is how they quantize the size of the pointer. So I usually keep mine probably about like a 1 to 3 or something like that. But it could be larger, which is very helpful for people who are trying to find their mouse and aren't sure where it is on the screen, and that can be very frustrating and inhibiting you to be clicking on things that you want to. And so the next thing that you can do with the mouse pointer is change the color of it. So because I have made my screen in like dark mode, so a lot of my backgrounds are black as opposed to white. And I'll get in kind of how to change that a little bit here in a moment. But a couple things there is that having a dark background can increase your battery life, because it doesn't take as much power for a black screen as it does for a nice bright white screen. It takes a little bit more power to kind of have that bright white color. So that's one reason that you might want to have a dark background. The second reason is contrast. So like some people like white text popping against a black background. That can offer a little bit more pop on the letters against the darker background. But it is always user preference. So there's no one size fits all. It's so whatever you think is like the most standing out colors is the right answer. There is no wrong answer with that. So I can make my mouse white is kind of standard with a black outline. I can switch that and make it black with a white outline. So now I have a dark mouse here. Or we could have it so that it kind of it shifts color based on it kind of becomes see-through. If you can see the mouse here, and that word color is actually popping up through it. But the color is white text on a black background, but when my mouse goes up against it, now it's a black C on the white background of my mouse. So it kind of has the ability to shapeshift and kind of invert colors as it goes across things. So that is the see-through kind of inversion type of mouse that could be useful, just depending. And then lastly, you have the ability to change the color of the mouse to any color you want. So black and white are kind of standard, but if yellow really pops out to you, then I can change it to a nice yellow mouse. Or bright pink. I mean, whatever color you want. I can even create a custom color here, and I can find just the right shade of yellow and green that it just really does it for me. So again, no wrong answer to any of this. It's fun to play around with and kind of customize your computer, make it really catered to you, and it can optimize your ability to interact with it. So that is the mouse settings. So pretty straightforward there. Next, we have our cursor indicator. And if I turn this on, this will, so as you can see here for everyone tuning in, is the cursor is when I am typing that line that kind of blanks that shows you like where you're currently at on the document and where the words will start to come out at. at that location. I can make the indicator is basically a couple of colorful bulbs on each end of that blinking line that is your cursor. So if it's hard for me to kind of see where that cursor is, then I might want to add the indicator, and I can change the size of that indicator. So it goes scale of 1 to 5, and I can change the colors of that indicator too. So I can go from purple, green, yellow, again, I can pick a random color on the spectrum. So whatever color tickles your fancy, and let me try to demonstrate that somewhere. Will it pop up here? No. So it might be in a document of some sort. Let me open up a Google Doc and let's see if it comes up there. No, it's not. Interesting. I might have to mess around with that to apply it. Not sure why it's not applying, but that is how that works. I'll have to see why it's not automatically making that happen for me, or if it has to be in a certain type of document. I'm also not sure, but it should just work. Yeah, I am not sure, so I'm going to move on from that. But essentially, that's how that would it would look just like this image right here. I have used this before. So that is the cursor indicator, is that it helps you just kind of put a couple colorful ends on that line. And I'll play around with that when Steven's talking and see if I can't straighten that out. Next is the magnifier. So the magnifier is exactly what that sounds like. It's a way to magnify things on your screen without magnifying the entire screen, unless that's what you choose. It does have settings here, which I just turned on by accident. So let's go back out. So right here, I scrolled down so I can turn the magnifier on and off with this switch, or you have Windows key plus, which I just hit, or Windows key minus. Steven, are you seeing this zoom in?
We are. We're actually also seeing the zoom controls, which is fascinating because it's the first time that's happened.
Oh, like all these?
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
I'm
Yeah.
seeing the control ribbon. That's the first time that's happened. Interesting.
Interesting. Yeah, yeah, I know. I'm also curious about that.
Hmm.
Okay, cool. So I wasn't sure if I'd be able to show the magnifiers, but it sounds like I can. So that's exciting because I took screenshots of it just in case on the PowerPoint slide deck. So I don't have to use those screenshots. I can actually show you. So basically here in our magnifier, you can turn it on and off, or if it's already off, I can just go Windows plus, it'll turn it on. So that's an easy way just to turn it on with hotkeys. So I can go Windows plus, and if I'm all the way zoomed in like this, I don't know how to get out. I'm starting to get disoriented. I can hit Windows escape and it'll take me straight out of it. So that's an easy way to turn it on and off. I'm a big fan of shortcut keys. I think they're always fun to just quickly get in and out of things. So the Windows key plus, and then also minus will make things smaller too. So if I go Windows key plus, we're really zooming in here. And also, the further you zoom in, you are going to sacrifice clarity. It's going to get a little blurrier. Kind of goes without saying, but there's only so many megapixels in these things, and like the more you zoom in on it, the more pixelated things get and blurry they are. So just food for thought. But I can go Windows plus and zoom in, and I can go Windows minus and I can zoom out. So I can find my adjustments that way. So anyway, I'll move on past the hotkeys. So we have a few different ways to view a magnifier on the ease of access settings. So you have a docked magnifier, you have a full screen magnifier, and you have a lens magnifier. So let's go through what all those look like. So we'll start with lens. So the lens, it actually puts a lens, and let me silence my phone. I'm getting a lot of beeps. So basically, the lens mode is attached to my mouse. So wherever my mouse goes, that's where the magnifier goes. It is attached to it. So I'm just kind of scrolling around. I can see my zoom bar up here. I can see all these things wherever the mouse is. I can also, I'm going to turn that off really quick. I can adjust the shape of that too. So down here, this is how I can adjust the shape of my lens. So if I want a nice, tall, vertical lens, then I can do that. Um, and now I have a vertical bar that's my lens. So I can look at things kind of in just a long straight magnifying bar. Or I can make it a square so that it's not as intrusive to the entire screen. I can make it like a nice little compact square like that, and then turn my magnifier back on. And now I have a little square or rectangle that I can move around. And while I am in lens view, I can still do Windows plus, 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 and I can zoom in on things. So I can still adjust the level of zoom while I'm doing that. And if you ever want to just kind of get to just kind of baseline, you can always just go Windows minus, zoom all the way out. But like, so I still have my lens on and it's still applied, but I zoomed all the way out. So it might be easier to click on things and adjust things when you're not zoomed in, because it can be a little disorienting because I'm trying to click on this box. And, so it's just food for thought. But again, like Windows plus, Windows minus, I can change the shape of the lens, and I can use that to magnify on things without magnifying the whole screen. And next we have docked. So if I turn on a docked magnifier, what this is going to do is it's going to bring me up an actual just static magnifier. So I can adjust the size of this. I can kind of pull it with the arrows, as you see. I can adjust it. I can make it half my screen if I want. So right now, I have my mouse is at the bottom of the screen, but on the top half of the screen is the magnifier. So right now, I'm not magnified at all. So let's actually zoom in on some things. So I'm going over here to mouse pointer. Here's a click box, and I can look up at my docked magnifier, and I can make sure I'm reading and looking at what I'm intending to. So it's just another way to have a magnifier. And I can make it a little smaller too, so it's less intrusive to my actual screen. And so basically wherever the mouse hovers, that is what's going to be on the magnifier. So whatever I'm hovering over, that will be on the magnifier. So I don't have to worry about the lens. It's not attached to my mouse. I mean, I guess in a way it's attached to my mouse, but it's static. So that is a docked magnifier. And what I could do is if I had dual monitors, and I had another monitor next to my monitor for like a work desk setup, setup, or even at home, whatever it might be, I could dock a magnifier on my secondary screen, and that way I can have a full screen on one side and I can have my big docked magnifier on the other side. So I can use two screens to kind of just be able to have more visual screen space and less of that magnifier taking that up. So it could be an instance that I use a docked magnifier on a second monitor. And lastly, full screen is kind of what we started with, but I will show you again, is that it just makes everything larger. And then you have to pan left and you pan right. So it can be a little more disorienting because you have to pan around and find the spots you want. But it can make the whole screen larger pretty quickly. So that is the magnifier settings. Next, I'm going to breeze through a couple of these because we want to save time to go over Mac OS and talk about Morphic. So I'm going to just briefly go over color filters. There's not too much to say here other than you can turn them on. So now I've turned on my color filters, but I already had an inverted filter on. So now it's like inverting an invert. So it has me looking like I'm a negative, like a photography negative right now, which I don't know, you guys probably can't see that, but anyway, that's why things look a little wonky here.
No, strangely, we can see it. This is completely new.
Yeah. Oh, so like you actually see my
I just saw the color inversion change. So
yeah.
just for context, everyone, Zoom used to not allow us to show that because it used to be a filter layer over top of the system. So kind of like the Zoom controls. So they couldn't be shared. For whatever reason, now that we're sharing our entire screen, that's actually being able to show this. So either a new update did that or something changed in the meantime.
Yeah.
Hence our
Which
surprise.
Yeah, yeah. I'm never sure what Zoom will show on a screen share, but this is cool because I had a lot of screenshots of these things because I didn't think I'd be able to show you guys, but here we are. So what I can do is I can invert colors, so it'll literally just reverse whatever color's on the screen. So if it's black, now it's white. If it's white, now it's black. So when I have it off, I already have a dark mode on. So when I invert my colors, it makes things kind of back to what they normally are, which is white background with black text. But if you already have a white background with black text and you press invert, it's going to make it black with white text just for just to keep things straight here and a reference. So anyway, next you can do grayscale, where it makes everything gray, for lack of a better word, or grayscale inverted. So you have light grays, dark grays, and like medium shade grays, and then a white background versus a black background. So you have inverted versus regular, grayscale, and then there's also some settings for color blindness filters. So green weak, which is deuteranopia, and do not say it how I said it. I'm sure that's wrong. And there's red weak, which is protanopia. And then we have blue yellows that kind of take preference here. So so it's like bringing out the pop of certain colors to help kind of combat color blindness. So there are some settings built in for specifically red, greens, and blue yellows. So that is just quick color filters that you can turn on and off. And then next we can get into high contrast, which is another setting below color filters on our visual display. And we're almost through vision. If I turn on high contrast, then I have a please wait going on my screen. Am I still being heard on Zoom?
Yes, you are.
Okay, I didn't know. It says please wait on my screen right now, which I don't know if
Might
you
have
guys.
been because you were applying something. Yeah,
Yep,
there you
yeah.
go.
I just didn't know if everyone saw the please wait or if it was just looking like I'm just sitting here. But yes, so high contrast on. So basically, with high contrast, it's exactly that, but it's customizable. So I created this one earlier, just kind of playing around with some like louder colors. So I'm just in like I googled a couple things earlier, so I'm just in like this is a Windows speech recognition commands I was going over earlier. But as you can see, the background is this lime green, dark lime green kind of color with black text over it. And I set that up specifically. So if I wanted to, I have a couple other presets here as well. So we can go with a different high contrast. And now my text is yellow, my background's black, my hyperlinks are this purple, blue. So all this is to say that it's highly customizable with whatever you want. So I can make the background a certain color, I can make text a certain color, I can make disabled text a different color. Um, I can make hyperlinks a different color so that they're obvious, and so on and so forth. So I can literally go through all of these marks and I can make my high contrast kind of any color I want of any part of it. So it's pretty easy to adjust and just kind of playing around with it and just figuring out what you like. It's good to have hyperlinks be a separate color than text so that they're obvious. So it is good to have color differentiation. I wouldn't make everything black with a white background. I would make certain things have different kind of standout colors. So that is in a nutshell how that works. We don't have to really go too much more on that. It's just you have the ability to customize the contrast on your screen, very specifically. And now I'm turning it off, so I have another please wait on my screen. So I just need a moment as it's applying the settings. So don't worry when this kind of sits there for a while. It does take like 10 seconds. All right, now I'm back out. So, and then lastly, and I won't go over this too much because we're already at 1:30 and we're starting to run out of time. And I want to give Stephen plenty of time and still talk about Morphic. But narrator is right here in our accessibility settings. I can turn narrator on and off. And narrator is basically a screen reader. It describes what's on your screen so that you can use that information to navigate your device, and it can be controlled by keyboard, touch, and mouse. So I can turn
Setting narrator dialog. OK. Button. Alt plus O. Heads up. Narrator keyboard changes. We've updated the narrator keyboard layout so it more closely matches the turn off narrate. Don't show again. OK.
and
Setting narrator heading level 1. Welcome. Exiting narrator.
And I'm gonna turn that off because it can be kind of overwhelming with how much audio you get when you're not used to it, which I'm not used to it because I don't use narrator every day. I do train people on kind of how to use it and different features of it, but it does have a lot of audio input going on kind of all the time. So there are some keys to kind of scroll through things, and there are ways to adjust your narrator, that it can have different voices. You can change the voice speed, the voice pitch, the voice volume. I can have it don't announce certain things, increase pitch. I can have it text only, or it can talk about control details, or so you have like levels of how much detail that you can have it read off to you. So this does have pretty in-depth settings. So I could probably talk for a whole hour on just narrator, and different ways to tweak it and things like that. So for today's introduction to accessibility, we're just going to talk about it being a screen reader, being able to read what's on your screen, and using your arrow keys and your tab keys to kind of go through what you want it to say, and pressing enter, which will help you select certain things. It can also be used with braille displays, that you need to install software that lets your computer communicate with it. But it can be used in a conjunction with those external braille display devices as well. So a matter of having a braille display with a screen reader can really open up a world of accessibility for individuals who are blind and getting on the computer. So there are tools to help. So I'm going to pivot now. Let's talk about hearing. I'm going to briefly go through the rest of this and give Stephen a chance to go through his things. So hearing, basically, I can just change the volume. There's also keys on your keyboard. Mine's F3 and F4. I can just press those keys and adjust volume that way. I can turn on mono audio. And that combines the left and right audio channels into one channel. So if there's any variance of like what audio is coming in left side versus right side, if I'm deaf in one ear, I would really just rather have everything come out of the same side equally, so I can hear everything out of my left ear as opposed to my right ear, for instance. So that is really quickly those two settings. And then I can also turn on visual alerts, so it can make my screen flash if there was an alert, if my computer's trying to tell me something, there's an update going on, it could be anything at all. I can make my computer actually give me visual alerts as opposed to those audio beeps that you might hear. So I can make the whole screen flash, the active, or I can make the active window flash, or whatever window I'm currently in, or I can make the title bar of the active window I'm in flash. So it's just like different levels of flash, or I could just turn it completely off. So that is audio. And then there's also closed captions that you can turn on for any other audio content. So it displays audio as text. So you don't have to use your sound as much or rely on it. And I can change the colors and the style of the font and the size and all that kind of good stuff as well. So that's hearing. And then lastly, we're on interaction. And interaction is things that are usually physical in essence. So if I had any physical disabilities, I might want to dictate my text as opposed to typing it. So I can turn on speech recognition, and I could essentially go to a URL. Hello, my name is James Whitney. So for instance, it's still listening. So it's going to catch a little bit of that at the end. And that's just quickly, hello, my name is James Whitney. I actually got that completely accurately. It spelled my last name right. But not to be confused with, there are a lot of inaccuracies with these things. They can oftentimes get your words wrong, especially if you don't enunciate like really obviously. Like I said Whitney, because oftentimes it'll just kind of not hear the T. It'll think I said Whitney. So you have to really emphasize your consonants and vowels and just trying to make it hear you as best as possible. And so that's speech recognition. And then keyboard settings, I can turn on my on-screen keyboard, which is just exactly that. It's an on-screen keyboard. So if I'm using eye gaze technology, or if I'm using a wearable mouse or something like that, very likely I might want to use an on-screen keyboard. And there's also sticky keys. So I'm sure, and everyone in here has probably pressed the shift bar 5 times by accident. So I just did it right there. Do you want to turn on sticky keys? I can say yes. What sticky keys do is that, for instance, if I'm trying to press Control Alt Delete, you normally have to press them all down together. But when sticky keys are on, I can just press Control, then I can press Alt, and then I can press Delete. But I don't have to hold them down at the same time. It sticks them down as you press them one at a time. So that's what sticky keys is. And there's a few other settings in here, like filter keys. So if I have tremors or shakiness, it can ignore brief or repeated keystrokes. So it can help try to increase your accuracy and kind of take away. It'll filter out a couple of those unwanted pressings of buttons and things like that. And I'm going to move on here. The mouse settings is I can this is your second mouse settings, is visual mouse. And then I can control my mouse with a keypad. I don't have a keypad on my keyboard right now. But a keypad is kind of where your secondary numbers are. So you have numbers at the top of your keyboard. And then usually a lot of keyboards have a little keypad on the side that you can use in more of a square manner instead of like instead of your keys being at the top of your keyboard, it has them over here on the side so that you can kind of type with your fingers a little faster. But I could use the keypad as my mouse. So I could use those arrow keys on the keypad. If you guys have the keypad, there should be some arrow keys on a couple of those numbers. I could use that for my mouse movements. And lastly, eye control. And I can set up an eye gaze bar, a device, and the Windows software actually is ready for eye gaze control. So I just need to set my bar up, which is an external purchase, external purchase. It's something that you have to acquire. And then I can set up my eye tracking. I can calibrate it to my eyes, and without going into too much detail for sake of time, that turns my eyes into what controls the mouse, and wherever I look is where the mouse goes. I'll pass it off to Stephen because I went probably a little too long there. I apologize, Stephen, and I'll let him talk about Mac OS, and we will keep the train rolling.
All right. Give me just a moment. Make sure I'm sharing my entire screen. There we are. Okay. So this is going to be a bit shorter because ultimately a lot of these settings are kind of the same thing. They kind of have the same functionality that James just showed you. But Mac OS has all these features built into the system settings. So if you go to the Apple icon, the first item on your desktop menu ribbon, and go to system settings, usually it'll start you in either general or appearance, and then a couple options down is accessibility. Kind of have the same options here where we have our vision settings, our hearing settings, our motor settings, speech, and general. Some of these might be in other places such as Siri, but they're also here so that you can, change these things at the same time. So Vision has the same ideas. You have Zoom, where you can set up keyboard shortcuts to zoom in and out. You can use trackpad gestures instead to zoom. If you have a touchpad that you are happy with or large enough, you can use 3 fingers in order to use zoom. And you can use scroll gestures instead. So you can do it kind of at the same time as you're moving the mouse if you're comfortable with it. In the advanced button here, you can instead set up the arrow keys and such to use instead. So whatever you're more comfortable with, you can set up and use. It will affect text, images, all of that as well. As someone I think pointed out in the chat, and how James has pointed out, sometimes things aren't set up to do that. It mostly works with things like websites, but not every website is set up for it, especially if it's like a web application like Google Docs or something, or if it's a software program. A lot of these settings tend to work best with native programs, but software developers should be trying to integrate or at least allow access to these settings and have them work as well. But we have zoom functionality. We have our display settings where we can infer colors. We can reduce motion if if fast motion or animations, either you can't track them or they cause motion sickness or something like that. You can dim flashing lights automatically. So if you are photosensitive, you can disable that. You can change contrast, all of those other settings. You can change just text size if you're really just concerned with being able to read like the names of your files, but the icons are fine. You can do stuff like that. Same, change your pointer filters and your color filters. I do want to point out that, like Windows, these color filters are really just a layover on the screen. And for some colorblind users, that's actually not helpful because now it's impacting other things, or it's only affecting it one way, and they need something a bit more tuned to them. So just keep in mind that if your program or software that you're using might have color blindness settings in it, and those might be better for you. But you're going to have to try and play with different settings to find something that works for you. But these are always here in a pinch. If for whatever reason, whatever you're working on doesn't have anything, this at least is something. Hopefully it helps. Um, and then there's spoken content. This is just the system voice. So when you first like get into into the your Mac and such, you might have this talk to you during setup. And this will also impact other things like the announcements or selections. It's different from this built-in screen reader, which is VoiceOver. So VoiceOver is the premier screen reader on Mac OS. Screen readers like JAWS and NVDA don't work on here. So VoiceOver is your best bet. Now, thankfully, VoiceOver is a very good program. There's a lot to it, far too much for me to cover. So I would suggest trying out their training modules that are available from this window, and open the utility to change the settings in it, and explore and try it out. It does use its own keyboard commands in order to enable everything. So you'll want to learn those, but it is an available tool. Now, there's hearing. So again, we have our audio settings where we can say, flash the screen when an alert sound occurs, change stereo audio to mono if you have trouble hearing in one ear versus both. You can, make all of the audio flatten into a single channel so you hear it equally on both sides, so that if for whatever reason something appears on the screen on left and it's directional and your left ear isn't able to hear it, well, you'll hear it in your right ear and you'll still at least catch it. Change your background sounds, all of those settings. You can change additional sound settings and it'll take you to the sound menu for those. Captions and live captions. These are both a little different. Live captions is going to play with any media files you have on your computer. And live captions is going to instead work for things where like FaceTime and such. They've built it into the system. So it is available from here. As you note, it is beta, so there might be problems with it, but again, it's better than nothing. So if you need something and you want to try it out, please, by all means, do so. Hopefully it helps you. We have the same kind of controls here. So motor control, we have voice control. Like the Windows speech recognition, it will dictate, but it will also control, you can control your system from it. So in some cases, you can tell it to put on an overlay grid, say click this region or click C2 or C9. You can break it down, zoom in, those kinds of things, or click New York Times link, stuff like that. So it gives you an alternative way to control your computer if you're unable to use the keyboard or use the mouse. It might be easier for you. All of these have a built-in guide in them. I should note, like in that voice control at the bottom, if you notice, here's a control guide, there's commands, what vocabulary works for it. So all of these different settings will tell you how to use them in addition to what you learned here today. We have keyboard, again, keyboard access. We have sticky keys, we have slow keys available here too. There is the accessibility keyboard. That's your on-screen keyboard. Again, not using hardware, but using a software system in order to type in. We have switch controls. So you can instead of using a mouse, you can instead use a series of buttons like your gamepad or an accessibility switch like we have in the AT library. So different ways you can hook up devices and the system should just automatically take those in and make use of them. So plug and play, and should hopefully make it easier to determine how to control your computer no matter what. No additional software, no hopefully no issues with just installing a driver and going. It should already just take it and run with it. Speech, again, kind of the same idea where you can speak aloud and it will bring it in. In this case, we are instead, if you can't speak, if you're nonverbal, you're able to type it in and it will turn that into speech. So this is kind of your text to speech item here, and personal voice. So you have all of the same settings, pretty much the same things. There isn't too much difference. Like I said, there is voiceover. It is a bit different, and that is honestly a more robust screen reader than narrator. It is kind of only your only option on Mac OS, but it does in exchange give you quite a bit of control. It does work a bit differently, where it will either work by groups, or you can tell it to read through DOM order, but a lot of it is going to be using either control option or control option command in order to do any function in it. So you kind of have to get used to using a different keyboard setup. I do also want to point out there is a shortcut system built into Mac OS, and I think Windows might have one too, but I'm not as familiar with it. But in this case, now I'm on a Mac Air, so I have a little button at the end of my F key rows. So after F12, there's just a little blank button. That is that Touch ID key, where it's used for logging in. You have to press it and hold it in order to verify. It'll bring up something else to verify. However, we can also use it to set up a shortcut for this. Different systems might use a different key for this, depending on what your keyboard layout is or what keys you have available. I think older Macs might have used the home key, what have you. But this option allows us to quickly press that button 3 times, or press this option Command F5 in order to open that shortcut menu, where we can choose what options we want to enable and just be able to open them immediately. So if I do this, and hopefully I don't lock my computer as I do this.
Accessibility shortcuts.
All right, I don't know if this is appearing on
Use
screen.
the Tab key to navigate, and press space to toggle an option.
You might be able to hear it though. But on my screen now is, it's dark and everything else. In the center is a dialog box that has the accessibility shortcuts that I've selected. So voiceover, zoom, invert colors, color filter, increase contrast. And it will also speak to me. That's that system speech. It's different from voiceover, but it does give you at least something to hear and select options so that you're not relying on not having voiceover while you're trying to enable it. So it gives us a lot of options to work with here. So that is just a quick thing on Mac OS. Like I said, it had all of these kind of function the same way. Really, the appeal is the fact that the system works with all these external things, and you have some tools available to you when you first get your computer out of the box, so you can set it up without any trouble. James?
All right, all right. So next we have 10 minutes left. So we might be tight on questions. So if anyone wants to email Stephen or I, we can certainly answer any questions you guys have. But I would like to quickly go over Morphic, just real quick. So essentially, we're going to skip down to Morphic. So this is open source software that can essentially, and my screen's all messed up now, isn't it? Yeah. My toolbar is going down here. So I'm going to cheat and search Morphic, and I'll adjust my settings later. So Morphic essentially, in a nutshell, so I'm going to be as brief as possible while still trying to explain this. Morphic is basically this on the side of my screen. It is a free download. And basically all those settings that I showed you earlier um, are right here. So increasing text size. See, I just pressed that plus button and it made my text larger. I can just minus that text size button and now it makes it smaller. Okay, there we go. So I guess when the text got too big, it clumped all my apps together. So I think that was kind of to Matt's point, is that sometimes when you zoom in too much or make things too large, it stacks all of your apps and clickable buttons on top of each other that make them no longer accessible, and that is a major downside. So it's always something to consider. But essentially, Morphic, and let me see. So I can basically what you do is create a login in Morphic. So I have my own login, and that it's like it's a website basically. And in this website, I can sign in, which I thought I was. So allow me to sign in really quick, and I can customize my bar. So let's go to this one. So what I can do is I can turn my contrast, dark mode, color vision. So basically what I can do is I can pull from over here. So all my accessibility settings, log off computer, volume up and down, whatever I want, I can click on it and it'll add it over here to my bar. I can even add quick links to web pages. So on this one, I have added a web page for getting on email and different websites. So I have a quick link to my email, even Facebook, Pinterest. So I can basically just quick access my settings. I can quickly access color, dark mode, contrast, text size, even web pages. So if I click on this web page here, I have saved this URL as mdtab.org. So I have a quick link to click on that and take me to a website of my choice. So it just makes things, basically your settings are already in your computer, but this allows them to be right here on the forefront. And I can quickly hide and bring back Morphic. I have this little lizard guy is their mascot, or the app kind of image is this blue and green lizard. So if I click on him, it brings up my Morphic bar. I can click on him again and get rid of it. So it doesn't have to always be here on the side, cluttering up your screen. But for just brevity and simplicity, that's kind of how it works. But the cool feature is that I have my login into Morphic. So in my Morphic login, I can go to a different computer, log into Morphic on that computer, which is a free download, and I can pull up all my same settings on any computer I go to. So if I'm on a strange computer or a public computer, or maybe I'm at a place I don't frequent and a computer I don't use very often, I can log into Morphic and I can pull up all of those settings that I normally use and apply them to that computer. And then when I just log off, things go back to normal when I log out of Morphic and I restart the computer. So it's a nice place to just be able to have consistency among those types of settings. And I can add links to even media like Netflix, Spotify, YouTube, and also my drives like Dropbox, Google Drive, etc. And I can even access things like JAWS and Zoom text and things like that via Morphic. As long as you have the license, then I can download. I have that downloaded already. I can apply it via Morphic, and I can still use those settings in different computers as well. Even if those computers don't necessarily have JAWS on them, I can access them through Morphic on a different computer. And I can customize my bar very much so. So I can just take things off of it to the side. I can get rid of things. So I can just, only what I want on here will be on here. And with that, I'm going to stop and open it up to any quick questions as we have 5 minutes left. And I know we had to breeze through some of that, but I did want to cover Morphic, and Stephen and I wanted to cover the accessibility settings, and that was our primary target today. So any quick questions, we're happy to answer, and you guys can always email us as well. I'll type my email in the chat. and thanks for joining us. I'll open up to questions.
I put our group email in the chat as well as the link to Morphic. So that group email goes to myself, my other team member, and to our executive director, Lori. So if you email that, we'll get you to the right people. Uh, I saw someone said that they have used Morphic with their father who has cognitive challenges, and it made their life so much easier. That's excellent to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. And Aaron Kelly had a question that was, does Morphic work through the browser or is it downloaded to the hard drive? And it is downloaded. So it's a downloadable software, but you access that download through the web browser. But to answer your question, is that it is downloaded on the hard drive. And then you have it to use. It has a desktop shortcut, as well as you can have a toolbar icon at the bottom for quick access.
Should also mention all of these settings we talked about today. Don't feel like you need to have a specific need for one of those things. If you want to try it out and you find it comfortable, use it. That's what it's there for. There have been plenty of times when it's like, for whatever reason, my mouse broke or whatever, or I just trying something out. So I'm using voice command or voice control. And sometimes it's just easier, or sometimes it's just better. So keep that in mind, is that you might just want to try out these settings to see if you're more comfortable with them.
Absolutely.
I'm not seeing any other questions.
Nope, I'm not either.
A lot of thank yous though. So thank you all for coming.
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody. I'll stay on for another minute, but I don't see any questions, so I will close out here shortly. And thanks for your attendance, and we hope to see you at the next one.
Yep. And thank you to our captioner today.
And thanks, Matt. Great to see you, man. I hope all's well.
I'm going to stop the recording.